All set. Awesome. It's 11 o'clock-ish, 11:01, so we're just going to go ahead and get started here. Thanks so much for joining us today for the very first ever virtual volunteer training for Snapshot Day. So thanks for being here. Before we get rolling, please be aware that this webinar is being recorded for later viewing for the folks who couldn't make it to our webinar today. Your microphones and videos are muted, so if you have any questions, if you could hold them till the end, and you'll be able to unmute yourself, I believe. You can also use the raise hand feature or type your questions into the chat box if anything comes up along the way. Go. So I'm Ellen Voss. I'm the La Crosse Area Aquatic Invasive Species Manager with River Alliance of Wisconsin. And I'll let the other participants introduce themselves. First, we have Jacqueline Lucas. Go ahead. Oh, you're on mute, Jacqueline.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jacqueline, and I know a few of you from last year's Snapshot Day, but we're very excited and so thankful that we were able to still do Snapshot Day this year. So thank you for everyone for joining. You've probably seen quite a few emails from me.
Awesome. Thanks, Jacqueline. We also have Paul Skowinski with UW Extension Lakes. If you want to introduce yourself.
Yep. Hello, everyone. This is Paul Skowinski. I coordinate the Citizen Lake Monitoring Network for the state of Wisconsin and have been involved with Snapshot Day for, I think this is my 4th year. I continue to lead the Oconto County site along with Steve Heimerman from Oconto County Lakes and Rivers Association. And I'll be moderating and hosting the webinar today. And
Thanks,
as
Paul.
Ellen said, you can.
I'm not sure if Maureen, oh, sorry.
Nope. You can unmute yourself to ask questions or use the chat function.
Thanks for setting this up, Paul. He also got our Zoom link going, so thank you for that. I'm not sure if Maureen is with us. If she's on the call, you can introduce yourself too.
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yep, go ahead.
Yeah. Thanks, Ellen, for sending me the email a little bit ago. So I'm Maureen Ferry. I'm our statewide aquatic invasive species monitoring coordinator. So I work with all the DNR staff and give guidance to the citizen programs on aquatic invasive species monitoring. I've been involved with AIS Snapshot since its impetus when it was Laura McFarland back in, gosh, 2013 we started talking, and then 2014 I think was the first event. And it's so exciting to see how it's grown. River Alliance has been amazing at coordinating everything. And I have to say it's hands down like the most successful citizen monitoring program that we have in the state of Wisconsin. So thanks everybody that gets involved with it. And I'm so impressed that we are still doing this during the pandemic and that you guys are still happy to get outside and help with this. So thanks everybody.
Yeah, there were lots of meetings to try to figure out how we could hold this, if we could hold it at all. So yeah, thanks to all the people who, Maureen and Paul especially, who are really instrumental in trying to figure out how we can do this year. So thank you. And thanks to all the volunteers who are on this call today. We really appreciate your help in protecting Wisconsin's water from aquatic invasive species. So I'll just jump right into the training portion of today. Many of you that are with us today have probably participated in a Snapshot Day event before, but you'll quickly notice the major changes in 2020. First of all, this volunteer training usually occurs the morning of Snapshot Day itself, but we've modified the schedule and the event to make sure that everyone stays as safe as possible during the pandemic. So today I'm going to go over the methods, the collection methods with you all that you'll be using in the field on August 15th, which is coming up really quickly. I'll go over the collection procedure and then how to record your data, and all the while trying to stay safe in the process during the pandemic. But on August 15th in particular, it'll be a little bit shortened day that starts out at, so from 9 to 9:30, that's when you'll pick up your supplies from your site leader at the check-in location. From 9:30 to 11:30, you'll head out into the field and look for aquatic invasive species at the monitoring sites. All of those sites have already been chosen by your site leader, so don't worry about that. And then from 11:30 to 12, you'll head back to your check-in location. You'll drop off all the supplies that you borrowed for the day and turn in your collections if you have them and report any findings that you have. All of this is site dependent. So your site leader is going to get in touch with you after this webinar in the coming week, and you'll be given all of the specific details that will be important for your site. So to quickly give you a little bit of background about Snapshot Day, Maureen and Paul touched on this a little bit about their involvement, but this all began back in 2014 as an effort to detect AIS infestations early when there's still something that can be done about it. We also want to raise awareness about AIS specifically in rivers and connected water bodies. And it was an effort to work in partnership with the Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources. And we're looking specifically at species of concern in the state, as well as aquarium releases that people were putting in water. We've come a long way since then, and the event and participation has continued to grow and expand. Even in 2020, when we're living in a pandemic, we have so many volunteers this year, and that's fantastic. And a lot of sites are involved. So we're really happy that in spite of everything, this is still going on. Back in 2017, we partnered with UW-Madison Division of Extension to add lakes and lake monitoring protocols. So not just rivers, but also lakes. Every year we work with more local groups and amazing volunteers like you all who are on this call. And again, early detection by volunteers has really allowed for quick management of invasive threats. And just to, again, reiterate how important it is that you're here, Snapshot Day last year, volunteers found a starry stonewort, which is a prohibited species in Wisconsin, at the Waukesha event. So more eyes on the water mean early detections faster, which is really, really key for any management efforts in the state. And just as a follow-up to that, if you want to look at previous events, I encourage you to Google Snapshot Day River Alliance. That'll take you to our website about Snapshot Day, and if you scroll way to the bottom, you can find what's called a story map, and it's a really cool tool. You can click on all of the dots there on the state, and it'll show you, what was found there, the species, the people involved, all of that, and it's a really great tool that's interactive, and we'll send out the link to that after this, after the webinar, so you can have a look too. But the 2019 one just is hot off the presses, so we'll get that out to you as soon as we can. But for now, the 2018 version is up. So jumping into Snapshot Day specifically, when you head out on Snapshot Day, you'll be on the lookout for 21 different invasive species. And this composite photo shows some of them that we'll be looking for. And here's that complete list of aquatic plants, wetland plants, and animals. Excuse me. Again, this is one of the major changes this year. These volunteer trainings are usually tailored to focus on the species that you're most likely to encounter in your particular area. But since we have folks from all over the state joining us, we're going to cover just some of the more common species that are present in the state today. I think I have 10 on this list. But the complete list will be available on the ID sheet that you're given on Snapshot Day. And your site leader is also going to provide additional information if there's something specific that you should definitely be on the lookout for, like starry stonewort, excuse me, in certain parts of the state. And there's a lot of information in the next few slides about species identification. And so we're, just as a reminder, we're not expecting you to remember all of this today. We're gonna, again, provide a reference sheet for everyone to use on Snapshot Day so you'll feel more confident when you're out monitoring. And we're also gonna include an electronic version of this really great early detector handbook that's from the Citizen Lake Monitoring Network that Paul was talking about. It's a really great reference and has a lot of really important information in there will be great for Snapshot Day and just in general when you're out and about. So we'll make sure that you have a copy of that as well. So again, I'm just going to jump into 10 of the probably most common species that you might run across when you're out in the field. And I specifically focused you on the ones that are, with really distinctive characteristics that you can feel pretty confident that you're seeing what you think you see when you're out in the field. So the first one here is curly leaf pondweed. It is extremely common throughout the state. And it's distinguishable because it has these leaves that kind of look like lasagna noodles. And each of those has these really fine serrations around the edge, which you can see in that that bottom right photo. Again, it's really common. Paul, feel free to jump in if you have comments along the way, but this is the time of year when it starts to die off a little bit. So it's kind of turning brown, but it's still definitely widespread throughout the state. Next on the list is Eurasian water milfoil. Again, this one is pretty common as well. There is a native species that it can be confused for because they both have those, whorls of 4 around a central stem. But the thing that's distinctive here that you want to look out for is the leaflet pairs. So the invasive plant at the bottom right there has 12 or more, and native species will have fewer than that. So that's the thing you want to look out for. Also, it's limp when you take it out of the water. Next is flowering rush. This species has been showing up all over the upper Mississippi River Basin this summer, unfortunately. So it's becoming a little more common in my particular area. It has these really pretty pink flowers on it, and they're still blooming right now, but they won't be probably much longer. But it's pretty distinguishable based on its flowers. But when they're not flowering, you can also check yourself with the leaves themselves. They're triangular in the cross section, which you can see in that bottom right photo. Next is Japanese knotweed. This one is a perennial that it can grow up to 10 feet tall. But again, the distinguishing feature thing that you want to look out for is this zigzag here on the branches that's kind of distinct. It also, in this photo on the bottom right, it's got these hollow stems that almost look like bamboo. So kind of a key feature there. Next is purple loosestrife. Most of you might be familiar with this one already, but it can grow up to 7 feet tallish. It has really pretty purple pink flowers and 5 to 6 petals on them. And they're all arranged on numerous long spikes. The thing to look out for here, the stem is, it can either be square or 6-sided, which is shown in that upper right photo. That was it for the plants. We're going to switch gears and head into a couple mussel and a couple snail species to be on the lookout for. So first off, we have zebra mussels, also unfortunately pretty common. The distinguishing feature here is that zebra mussels have that flat edge. So if you sit it on a surface, it is able to sit flat. And it also has a symmetric body to it. So if you turn the shell over, it'll kind of look the same on both sides. Also remember that no native mussels or clams have byssal threads. So it's hard to see in this photo. It'll be more clear in the next one. But if there are byssal threads present, they'll be more centrally located on the shell. And the second mussel is called quagga mussel. This one has a more rounded bottom to it. So if you try to set it down on a flat surface, it won't be able to sit flat. And again, here on the bottom right is a picture of those byssal threads, and they're more located more towards the back of the shell on the bottom. Excuse me. Next, we have Asian clam. So they're kind of small shells. They're about a couple inches in length. They're really thick and hard to crush, and they have these really thick concentric rings on them as well. And as shown in that left picture, the insides can be this, the color ranges from white to a kind of a purplish blue color. Next, we have a couple snail species. First of all, the faucet snail. I personally think snails are they're really easy to confuse with native snails, the invasive. So the key thing to look out for here is that these snails are only about a ½ inch long total, and they have 5 whorls as shown in that left figure. And importantly, it's a right-handed snail. So that means when the tip is pointed up, that opening here is on the right side of the shell. And the other thing that you really need to look out for is this, it has an operculum, which is sort of like a trap door for a snail that it can shut itself off from the environment. And that operculum will have these concentric rings, which you see on that photo on the left. So those are the key distinguishing features there. And then finally, the last species on our list is the New Zealand med snail. I've been personally thinking a lot about this snail this summer. It's a problematic one for our driftless streams here in my part of the state. But the thing to look out for here is that these snails are incredibly small. The max size you can think of as pretty similar to the size of a grain of rice. So they're really, really tiny. They're also a right-handed snail. But they also have 7 to 8 rolls, so a few more. And that does it for our species. Again, there are 11 that I didn't cover today that will also be included in your in that ID sheet that I told you about earlier. But don't be overwhelmed. Just remember, you don't have to be an expert here. You should feel free to use any identification materials that you have that are available to you when you're out on Snapshot Day. And, again, bring back anything that you're not sure about and that might look suspicious, and experts are trained to actually figure out what you have in hand. The next section of the presentation is an overview of the monitoring protocols that we're going to be using on Snapshot Day. There are 2 different methods. There's the dry and the wet, meaning whether or not you get in the water or can stay on the land. And then there are 2 site types, so sampling from bridges or sampling from shoreline. Despite, no matter what protocol you're using, the basics are pretty much the same for all of them. Step 1 is you spend 2 minutes per step doing each of those 3 things. So you're looking around the landscape, you're doing a rake through the water to figure out what plants come up, and then you scoop to look for those animal species. You'll collect any specimens as you go, and then step 3, definitely make sure you clean your gear before heading to the next site. Your site leader has already determined which protocol you're going to use in your particular location. But again, because there are people here from all over the state, there'll probably be all 4 methods used on Snapshot Day. So next we're going to show a video that goes over each of those protocols along with some safety information. And the thing to remember here is, even if your site leader determined a certain protocol, you should definitely only do what you feel comfortable doing and stay as safe as possible. And that's the most important thing that you can remember during the day. This video was made before the pandemic, but most of the information is still relevant, and it's really, it's fun. It features Darth Vader as shown in that photo here. And I'm gonna end the slideshow and show this video.
Are you ready for Snapshot Day? Each summer, volunteers throughout the state join the River Alliance of Wisconsin for Snapshot Day. This one-day event connects water lovers and local groups in a search for aquatic invasive species. Before you venture out, let's learn more about safety, monitoring, and species collection. When you meet at a site near you, you will train. Learn how to identify aquatic invasive species, or AIS. Monitor. Search for species of concern at nearby monitoring sites. Collect specimens of interest. Identify. Return to your training site and work together to verify your finds. Tools of the trade. Snapshot Day is a team effort. River Alliance and your site leaders will provide many supplies on the day, but you can help by bringing the following items. Garden rake. Cooler. Watch. Camera. Binoculars. Smartphone. Polarized sunglasses. DIY hand scoop. And a car to carpool to monitoring sites. Be prepared. Whether you are visiting a wooded creek or a sandy lake shore, it's important to be prepared for working outside and in varying weather conditions. Before you head out, remember, wear sturdy shoes or waders, bring a hat, sunscreen, and bug repellent, and dress for the outdoors. Safety first. On Snapshot Day, you'll have the option of entering a stream using wet protocols. Remember, safety first. Don't enter the water if there is a fast current, if there is any chance of overtopping your waders, or if the banks are too steep. Know your limits. Only do what you are comfortable doing. There are many ways to help on Snapshot Day. You can take photos of invasive species and your group in action, fill out data sheets and help time your monitoring partners, bag and label specimens, or help with decontamination. Monitoring protocols. Rivers and streams. There are 4 monitoring protocols for rivers and streams using 2 methods, wet or dry, and 2 site options, bridge or shoreline. We follow a simple set of steps. Spending 2 minutes per step, you will look, scanning the shoreline for AIS, rake for any submerged vegetation, and scoop for aquatic critters. You will collect specimens of interest as you go, and clean your gear before heading to the next monitoring site. Right-of-way and river access. We ask volunteers to respect any private property adjacent to your monitoring sites. At bridge locations, property boundaries may be unclear. This is why we ask you to work within the road right-of-way, which is 66 feet wide, 33 feet on either side. You can access your monitoring sites from the right-of-way. And remember, you have the right to be in the stream as long as your feet are wet. Dry bridge protocol. There are 4 sampling points in the dry bridge protocol method. They are located on either shoreline on both sides of the bridge. Starting at point A, for 2 minutes per step, you will look, scan the banks, surface water, and adjacent wetlands for species of interest. Drag a rake through the water to collect submerged vegetation and woody debris, inspecting after each drag. And when possible, you will scoop to collect substrate. Then repeat the process at points B, C, and D. Wet bridge protocol. Using the wet bridge protocol, we will make line or transect samples. This means we will take samples at several intervals along a line. Wading into the river starting downstream, you will move upstream to collect samples at 4 transects, spaced 20 paces apart. Enter the stream at transect 1. Then look, rake, and if possible, scoop, spending 2 minutes per step. Repeat at 2 to 3 points within the transect, depending on the size of the stream. Then move upstream 20 paces and repeat at the 3 other transects. Dry shoreline protocol. For the dry shoreline protocol, you will first determine the length of the shoreline you are able to monitor at a given site, also known as a reach. You will start downstream at the end of the reach. This will be sampling point A, and then you will move upstream to point B. At point A, you will look, rake, and scoop for 2 minutes apiece. Then you will walk to the top of the reach to point B, being observant for AIS as you go. When you reach B, repeat your steps from point A. Wet shoreline protocol. Using the transect sampling method, you will start downstream at the end of the reach, at point A, and move upstream to point B, sampling at 4 separate transects spaced about 20 paces apart. Enter the stream at point A. Once again, you will look, rake, and scoop for about 2 minutes per step. Then repeat at 2 to 3 points within the transect, depending on the size of the stream. Move upstream 20 paces and repeat at 3 other transects. Collect suspected AIS and place into a resealable bag. Label your findings. You will receive a waterproof label to put into your bag, or bags will be pre-labeled. Monitoring protocols. Lakes. When you arrive at a lake monitoring site, the first thing you will do is identify the boundaries of public access. This is to ensure that you are not trespassing on either side. Typically, you will be looking for a boat landing or a dock. Then you will identify 5 equally spaced locations between those boundaries. You will work from one end to the other. You should consider all docks and piers as sampling locations, even if they aren't equally spaced out along the shoreline. Now you are ready to start monitoring. Scan the area for 30 seconds, looking for species of concern and evidence of species. Toss the sampling rake into the water, making sure to hold on to one end of the rope. Aim for concentrations of plants or anything suspicious. Examine the materials attached to the rake and try to identify your finds using the resources provided. Collect suspected AIS and place into a resealable bag. Label your findings. You will receive a waterproof label to put into your bag, or bags will be pre-labeled. Recording data. Now that you have gathered specimens and have some guesses as to what they are, you will record information on your Snapshot Day datasheet. You will receive a datasheet for each location you monitor. The site location and name will already be printed at the top of the sheet. You will enter your name and the names of your team members, protocols and tools used, start and end time, best guesses on species type, area, and density. Let us know if you collected a sample and took a picture, and indicate if you saw no species or had other observations. Decontamination. Help prevent the spread of aquatic invasive species. Before you move to your next monitoring site, you need to clean your equipment and footwear. Rinse your rake and hand scoop. Scrub with the provided brush to remove mud, plant fragments, critters, and all other materials. Rinse again and dry. Don't forget to repeat with all other gear like shoes or waders. For more information and to register, visit the River Alliance website. Thank you, and we hope to see you on Snapshot Day. Search for species.
All right. Hopefully that was a good overview of all of the monitoring protocols for Snapshot Day. But again, you don't have to remember that all today. We're going to be providing a handbook as well and some other reference materials, so you'll feel confident that you know what you're getting into when you head out. And again, just please remember, use common sense. It might not and probably isn't possible to do all of those steps at every site that you're at. So just note any changes that you make on your data sheet, and remember that any collection is better than no collection. So just do your best, and that'll be great. Natalie went over this really well during the video, but just to reiterate, all the parts in blue on this slide are what you'll be filling out in the field. So again, the names of the volunteers, the protocols, the start times, all of that. The really important part here is at the bottom. Just if there are any changes, any observations, anything weird, just remember to write it in that box. That really helps out in figuring out what the day was like and what you saw and what was going on. And again, this was gone over really well in the video, but just a couple more things on collecting specimens. Please try to collect at least 5 intact specimens per species if you can. If you find a plant, please try to get the root system and the leaves, as well as the seed heads and the flowers. So all of those things really help people, the verifiers, determine, make a positive identification on the species that you find. So please try to grab all those things if you can. Also take photos whenever possible. And when collection isn't possible, photos are absolutely necessary. So there are going to be some things that you can't necessarily bring back with you, but definitely try to get as many photos as you can. You're going to be given bags with labels that you'll have to fill out. So you'll have to put the species name and the site ID on the labels. And don't worry, the site ID will be listed on your data sheet, so that information will already be with you. And then, like they said in the video, just put your specimen inside and seal it and put it in a cooler if you have one. And you'll bring those specimens back to your site leader. Again, this is one of the major changes from previous years. Usually when you would bring your suspected AIS back to your site leader, you would go over everything together as a group, try to determine what you saw, and just have a really good learning opportunity. This year, that's sort of going to be site dependent. Some site leaders feel comfortable doing that in a socially distant way. Others maybe don't. So again, your site leader will kind of determine what's going to happen at your particular location. But regardless, we're going to make all the effort that we can to follow up with you after Snapshot Day to, just let you know that what you found is what you think you found, and just try to be really good about the follow-up. And many of you, again, will probably be monitoring more than one site on Snapshot Day. So just to reiterate, it's extremely important that you decontaminate yourself and your gear after you finish up at each site. We don't accidentally want to be the people who are spreading invasive species. So that decontamination step is super, super important. Waiter wash stations might be available at some of the sites that you're visiting. If so, please go ahead and use them. They don't always have water available. So again, just do the best you can and try to clean your gear as well as possible. Last thing here, we really want to document the day as much as we can. So please take photos when you're out in the field. We want to create another story map of Snapshot Day 2020. So please only take selfies and socially distant photos, or photos that are with members of your own household. And please share those photos with us at River Alliance. So the email address is there, ais@wisconsinrivers.org. And yeah, we hope that we can use all the materials that were collected, all the photos, for the next story map for next year. And if you're on social media, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, you can use that hashtag Snapshot Day 2020. And one last thing here, we're living in a pandemic, and it's up to all of us to follow the recommended guidelines to stay as safe as possible. So you're already probably really familiar with what those look like, but we just want to reiterate the importance of staying safe during Snapshot Day. Collecting data is important, but your health is the most important thing. So we appreciate your willingness to volunteer, but health and safety is the most important thing. So we're going to require all participants to practice social distancing, stay that recommended 6 feet apart if you're from a different household. Use masks, gloves, and hand sanitizer liberally. Please don't carpool. I know they talked about that in the video, but please don't carpool if you're from different households. Just drive separately. Bring your own snacks and your water. And if you're feeling sick or not well, please don't come. That's a really good way to just please stay home if you're not feeling well that day. And some parting thoughts here. You might be wondering, what about my site? Who's in charge? Again, your site leader is going to be in touch with you soon in the coming week to send you all the information that you're going to need about your specific site. So the species any extra species to be on the lookout for, the logistics involved, etc. So don't worry, that information will be forthcoming. And again, just to reiterate, you don't have to remember everything that we talked about here today. We're recording this webinar. It's going to be available to you as a reference. We're also going to send these reference materials to you in a follow-up email. So you'll have those ID materials as well as the Snapshot Day methods that I showed you on that YouTube channel. They're going to be available as well. So don't worry. But again, if you have any questions at all, just let us know, ais@wisconsinrivers.org. We want to say a big thank you to all of the partners that are joining us this year. Despite everything, we still had a lot of willing groups that worked hard to find volunteers and make sure that this event happened in their specific location. So thank you so much to all of these participants. And we also want to say a big thanks to the Alliant Energy Foundation. We were the recipient of an environmental stewardship grant from them, and it was really generous to help support our Snapshot Day activities. And we're also super grateful to Culvert for their generous donation as well. So thanks to both of those. And that does it. That covers all of the material that we usually cover in the volunteer training that occurs on Snapshot Day. Again, this webinar is going to be available for viewing after today. So if you want to watch it again or have any questions for us. And other than that, I think we can open it up to questions. People have them.
Thank you, Ellen. Yes, please go ahead and ask questions. If you have anything specific, you can ask it now, or like we said, you can always email that to us. We will be sending out some follow-up. Feel free to put it in the chat if you don't want to unmute.
Am I going to need any park pass?
You shouldn't need any park passes. All of the sites, like I said, have already been vetted and chosen, and all have public access. So you should be good without having anything like that.
Oh, cool.
Someone asked if boots or waders better for scrubbing off critters after sampling. In my personal opinion, waders have a lot of nooks and crannies that are kind of hard to scrub, but either of those is fine. However you feel safest getting in the water. Just make sure that you use that brush, or use a brush to scrub it as well as you can before moving on. What do you think, Jacqueline?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, there's plenty of people who want waders so that they don't get wet at all. But if you don't feel that way, again, there's a lot of people who love the sandals or water shoes and not having to worry about their boots overflowing. As far as getting critters off, yeah, I would say just using brushes. The good thing about water shoes is you can kind of rinse them in the water.
Also, thanks, Sheila, for the reminder too. We found Chinese mystery snails in Dane County in 2019. So that wasn't one of the species that I went over today, but it is definitely on those identification sheets that your site leader will have for you on Snapshot Day. So thanks for that reminder too.
So that handbook that you guys have with the species in it, do we got to print that off online, or do they have one printed for us already?
We sent a handful to each site leader, and there's site leaders who have different versions or who maybe have laminated copies, so there should be some available. We'll also send things in a PDF if you wanted to access it just on your phone in the field. If you want to print anything yourselves, you're welcome to do that, but we of course don't require that.
Okay, one more question. I have a camera. Do I need to buy scud disc or whatever that disc is you put in there for it? Or do we just use it for the pictures?
So pictures are, I mean, if you want to take group pictures, you can take that with whatever device you want and just email them to AIS@Wisconsin Rivers or to your site leader or both. If you're talking about pictures for species identification, again, just the easiest way that you could send that electronically. So that's why I know a lot of people have, smartphones or, iPods or iPads, and then they'll just email them.
Okay, thanks.
Mm-hmm. I see another question from Kathleen about recommending locations to sample. We've had a few questions like that. So locations have already been identified between the site leader and the Department of Natural Resources. So they're already set. The data sheets have actually already been sent to the site leaders earlier this week. So they're pretty locked in. I know it seems like something that we could just add on the fly, but all of this data, because it's going through the Department of Natural Resources and we have insurance on the event and other things like that, it's pretty set beforehand. So if you have site recommendations, you're welcome to email us and we can look at some of the local groups. And if they're going out to do any sampling outside of Snapshot Day, we're happy to connect you. I know there's a lot of sites that people kind of are dedicated already to monitoring. Does that answer your question, Kathleen? Oh, I see something from Sheila back. So it sounds like you are already in communication. So just reach out to me if it's a very site-specific question. And I see Ellen putting in, so decontamination, it really does vary by site. River Alliance is trying to really limit the amount of supplies we send this year. We have a pretty reduced capacity of folks who can be in the office, as well as people receiving those items. So if you do have anything, like she said, jug of water, or, you know, you feel comfortable wearing, you know, bringing a pair of sandals and rinsing off your other pair of shoes or boots in the water, all of that is good. Not every site has those way to wash stations, but there will be quite a few boot brushes available.
And thanks, Paul, for posting that. If folks want to check out the chat box, he's posted the link to that early detector handbook. What I find too, I don't know if folks can, I like to download these things to my phone, and it's just a nice, really easy reference to have on you. If you have that capability, it's a good thing to do. So might want to think about that for Snapshot Day, but it's not required.
Thanks, Ellen. That's a great point, and that's why we don't spend, I would say, a ton of time going into species identification right now in the PowerPoint, is because typically people need to refresh it on their own anyway, or you still may be unsure in the field, which is perfectly fine, and want to, you know, bring something back and ask questions, or again, do a little more digging once you're actually looking at the species in your hand. All great questions, though. Keep them coming if you have any. If you need to hop off the call, you're welcome to at any point. We're still recording, but otherwise, feel free to speak up or write something in the chat.
Do I need to bring any extra, like coffee cans and stuff for dipping?
Yeah, so we've had a few questions about those kind of scoops, and I actually have an email in my draft out to a few people who asked about that. You are welcome to bring those. They're not always something that's available, and coffee can is kind of something we recommend because most people have one laying around. But if you have any kind of recyclable material that you can create a second use out of, it's a great way. Colanders may work. You are welcome to use them. You might lose some of those really small species. Some of those mesh ones might work. Anything you are welcome to bring. And again, it's kind of that anything is better than nothing. So if you have something that scoops and drains water, you can look for things. The smaller it is, the more, you know, dirt and rocks and debris you'll get in it, but you'll also be guaranteed to get any of those small New Zealand mud snails if you have any. And then the larger, again, you just might miss a few things, but it's still better than nothing. It's all DIY.
I could probably pick up a bunch of them from the store and stuff, you know, empty ones that they use in the stores, and then drill holes to the bottom and stuff, you know.
Yeah, if you want to bring a few of something, we're letting that be up to volunteers, whether or not they want to share supplies and or receive borrowed supplies from folks due to the nature of the year. But of course, if you have extras or want to bring more than one of anything, in case that another member is up for using it, you're welcome to. It's pretty simple, just kind of drilling some holes so that water comes out and other things stay in. I see, will we get a summary of species found? So we're working on that. And again, we are really trying to make that more of an emphasis this year because a lot of those big group discussions will be lost. We'll coordinate with your site leaders. We're also hoping to get a quicker turnaround on the story map and at least create a simple version that just goes through everything that's verified. Sometimes that does take some time because it goes through not only us, but the Department of Natural Resources and gets put into their actual database online. But yes, Anne, that is our biggest goal this year, is to make sure you all get some of that after Snapshot Day feedback.
Paul has a really good point that I'll just mention to everybody here if they're not watching the chat, but it's completely fine to bring back specimens that turn out to be native or non-invasive species. It's still, you know, again, some site leaders like Paul is one who is going to make an effort to, you know, try to go over species with people as they bring them in. And that's, that definitely can happen. Like if you're not sure what you're seeing, you bring back a native species, don't worry about it. That's fine too. It's still a way to learn. So don't worry about, bring back whatever you're suspicious about or whatever you think is suspicious.
And thanks, Kathleen, for the suggestion with a milk jug. That's another really easy and pretty common item that most people have.
Now with the snails, how far out do we got to walk to find snails if we find some?
So you can typically do the scooping, again, depending on each location. They're all very different, as I'm sure you know the state is, from dry or wet protocol. So a lot of times I've even just stood kind of on the edge and scooped right then and there.
Oh, so sometimes they'll be in the sand and sometimes they'll be on top of the sand?
You usually want to scoop into the sand just to make sure you're getting a layer, but sometimes you don't actually need to be in the water to do that. You just kind of reach your hand into the water.
Okay, thanks.
Mm-hmm. Great, yeah, zebra mussels stuck to shoreline rocks, so that definitely happens. And as much as we don't want to see zebra mussels, I know last year it is a very recognizable species, and it is, oh gosh, I can't say the word exciting because it's really terrible, but like I said, because it's so recognizable and they can be in such a varied environment, it is very interesting. In Manitowoc, we had some huge zebra mussels in a river that had never even been documented to have zebra mussels last year. Yeah, thanks, Sheila. Oh, interesting. Kathleen says that she's found shells of mystery snails floating next to muskrat mounds.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
If we find a zebra mussel and stuff, you know, do we put that in a bag and label that too? Or
site leader. Yeah, so site leaders may have, you know, different specifics for you on whether or not they need or want you to bring back living animals. Thankfully, you know, if you're pretty certain it's an invasive species, it's not harming, it's helping our environment to get them out of the system. And so you can talk to them about whether or not they need that verification or just photos. I've been on sites where we've brought them back, and your site leader should know how to dispose of it.
Oh, okay.
Remember too, if you have any questions that come up or that you don't think about right now that come to you later, please feel free to email Jacqueline at ais@wisconsinrivers.org. But otherwise, yeah, any last questions people have? Otherwise, we can end the meeting. And Jacqueline put that email address in the chat as well. So if you want to have a look. Oh, I think that was only to me, Jacqueline.
Yeah, thanks very much. It was very informative.
Thank you very much. And thanks to everybody who joined today. Again, we'll send out all the materials that you'll be needing shortly. And thanks again for joining us. We appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you to the site leaders. There's a handful of site leaders on here, so thank you to them as well for joining.